I'll show you the deck. This was the deck I drafted. I have some thoughts and concerns about it. I did bounce around a little bit, but let's talk about what it is first. All right. So I drafted Izzet. I bet you guys are shocked after yesterday's stream. My first option was between a Beast Whisperer, the 2 green, 2 colorless, 2/3 green creature that draws you a card whenever you play a creature card, or a Lava Coil. And I was like, fuck that. I took a Lava Coil. I don't want to be green in this expansion if I can help it whatsoever. So I took a Lava Coil first. The second card pick was fairly uninteresting, but it was between a bunch of garbage and a Capture Sphere. And I took a Capture Sphere second. And then my third pick was like a Nightveil Sprite, I think. So pushed immediately towards blue-red. The guy to my right kept passing me good red cards, so I kept taking good red cards. And white and blue-red at my table was totally open. There were 16 of us drafting last night. We did 2 pods of 8. My table ended up with 2 Dimir players, like a Selesnya player, and something else like that. No other Izzet players at my table. So red was fairly open, and blue-red was entirely open. I got past a lot of good cards for this. I want to talk about this deck a little bit because it was interesting. Because again, I'm playing more of this. So this deck moved around a lot. I ended up with 2 Beam Splitter Mages, but I didn't get any Sure Strikes. I only had 1 Sure Strike, and it was pack 3, pick 1 if I wanted it, and it didn't come back, which was a bit of a bummer. I would have loved some more Sure Strikes. I did draft. This is the sideboard drafts over here. We had Dazzling Lights, a Maximize Altitude, Maximize Velocity, a Mesmerist, a Sinister Sabotage, 2 Capture Spheres, which I didn't play at all, and Devious Cover Up over here. I ended up having a fair amount of removal with 2 Lava Coils, 2 Direct Currents, both passed to me fairly late, an Inescapable Blaze, and 2 Hypothesizals. And I ended up not playing Capture Sphere because it has no synergy with my double Smelt Ward Minotaurs, my Murmuring Mystic, or my Piston Fist Cyclops, or my Electromancer. So I just ended up playing instant and sorcerer speed removals instead. I did pass. I did value draft 1 card. I did rare draft. My pack 3 pick 1 was between an Assassin's Trophy or a Crackling Drake. Crackling Drake being the 2 blue, 2 red, 0/4 flyer that gets higher value based on the cards in your deck, in your graveyard. And the Crackling Drake would have been amazing. I was secretly hoping it would wheel, and it didn't, because some guy was playing some guy splashed it in like a red-black deck that also had blue for it or something like that, and it didn't wheel. I was secretly hoping so much, but I couldn't make myself pass the Assassin's Trophy. I sat there for like 45 seconds going like, the disciplined pick is the Drake. Filthy, take the Drake! And I couldn't make myself do it. This deck started a little different. I started with a lower creature count. I initially started with, so this creature count right here, we can work it over right here, is 16 creatures. The creature count initially with this was like more like 13. I think, why can't I click out of this now? I think I had a second Maximize Altitude in there, and I had the 2 Capture Spheres or something like that, or maybe a Capture Sphere and a Sabotage, and I didn't have in 3 bodyguards. I only had in 2. I didn't have the Crab in. I only had, and I didn't have the Fire Urchin in. Fire Urchin ended up being a really nice addition. I got screwed in my games by not having high enough creature count, my early games. So round 1, I played against a Boros aggro deck. We went 3 games. I won first game, he won second game, I won third game. The game that I lost, he had like 3 Loxodon Restorers and like a Healer's Hawk, and I just couldn't deal enough damage to his face. I got a Wee Dragonaut, so Wee Dragonauts performed very poorly. I think the most it ever did was 3 damage. Yeah, I sold the Assassin's Trophy in person yesterday for 16 to a guy who needed one for his deck. It's a little bit discounted, but I'm like, I don't want the card. I don't collect the cards, but I do like being able to pay for my drafts out of the cards and rewards I make out of that. But anyways, Nightveil Sprite, I'm not sure it belongs in blue-red at all. Like, surveilling 1 per turn is really good, and chip damage in the air isn't nothing, but fuck. It feels like your opponent has so much health when you're only chipping away 1 at a time. Beam Splitter Mages were really, I took my second Beam Splitter Mage over my first Crater Fist Goblin or Crater Goblin dude, the 2/2 Sacks to Destroy, and in retrospect, I think that was a mistake. I love this card. I need Sure Strikes when I play this card. If I don't have Sure Strikes, this card is fucking not great. I did win 1 game using Maximize Altitude. I had 2 in my deck for that for some reason. I think because my opponent had no way to deal with flyers, and I sideboarded in a second one. And my winning play on 1 turn was I had a Beam Splitter Mage in play with a Leapfrog, and I cast Maximize Altitude 3 times and got +6/+6 across my creatures and killed him from 10. So I did win a game with Beam Splitter Mage, but I only won 1 game from Beam Splitter Mage. The Wojak Bodyguard screwed me pretty hard. I played against my second set of games was versus a Boros player, and the Boros player had a couple pieces of removal, like a Direct Current, a Luminous Bonds, and something else that removed. And he just kept killing all the cards that came with Wojak Bodyguard. And that was really, really painful. I had Wojak Bodyguards just sitting there unable to activate. I thought they'd be decent in this deck. First of all, these were very, very cheap picks for me. They came around very late. They were not drafted at my table at all. I think I got one like second to last pick and one like a fifth to last pick or something like that. So they were very cheap for me. They're okay when you have a bunch of them because they can work with each other. And I was thinking that they would be better with maximize altitudes, like because you could, if you had 2 Wojak Bodyguards on the table, you could maximize altitude 1 and then mentor the other, which seemed pretty great. But didn't get that effect to trigger at all. I also thought with the all my early drops being 2/2s or 1/2s, and then having 2 Smelt Ward Minotaurs, which I took fairly highly, but they were fairly cheap for me again because no one was drafting red around me. I thought the Bodyguards would be really good, but they did not perform well for me. I had issues with blocking. The most annoying play of the day for me was when my in that second game versus that Boros player, there was a the board was stalled. I was just flooding like no tomorrow, just like land. I used double Direct Current that game, removed 4 creatures with Direct Current, was sacrificed lands to the Direct Current. I had a Hypothesis. It didn't matter. I couldn't stop with the land flood. And I'm sitting there with a Wojak Bodyguard on the board, and every time I play a creature, which is like once every 2 turns, he just removes or disables the second creature, right? And then and I'm low on health, and I'm at like 6 health or something. He's at like 18. And I finally get a secondary creature, and it's Piston Fist Cyclops, right? So now I've got Piston Fist Cyclops and fucking Wojak Bodyguard on the board. I can block, can't do anything else really, but I can block. And my opponent plays a Goblin Locksmith. And my opponent, prior to this Goblin Locksmith, has a raid leader, or whatever is it, War Leader? War Leader. So let me show you this card. Like, look at this interaction for ridiculousness, right? Where's the War Leader? Do I not have one? Is that why? Just a second. Maybe it's not called a War Leader. What's the dude called? The 2/2 dude that has haste? War Boss. Thanks. All right, so my opponent has a Legion War Boss in play. And each turn, he's not attacking with it, but each turn the 1/1 runs into me. And I've got the Wojak Bodyguard and the Piston Fist Cyclops in play, right? So I block the 1/1 every turn with both. And then, the 1/1 dies. He passes turn. I pass turn. I draw land, pass turn. He does something. Passes turn, I draw land, pass turn. It's like that for 3 turns. And then he plays a fucking Locksmith on the board. Remember, I'm at 6 health. And the Locksmith, when it attacks, creatures with Defender can't block. And when my creature with Defender can't block, my Bodyguard can't block because he can't block alone. So my top deck, after he plays the Goblin Locksmith, is Inescapable Blaze. And I had to, on his turn, Inescapable Blaze the Locksmith. Otherwise, I was taking lethal damage, 6 damage, and dying from that. And like that was my saddest play of the evening. I'm like, really? I have to fucking Inescapable Blaze the Locksmith? I was so annoyed. I wasn't really annoyed. Actually, I thought the whole thing was actually hilarious. I play this guy a lot. He's the guy who I played for. I beat him a couple times in the final round, and then he beat me last week in the final round. He tends to draft good decks, and I like playing against him. But that was like such a ridiculous interaction for that. Piston Fist came late for me. So, okay, player 2, match 2. I played 3 games versus him. He beat me first game with Cosmotronic Wave and Boros, killing me from a stable board. Second game, I beat him actually having some aggression and getting some creatures. And the third game was that game I was just describing, where he had that horrible board state. And I just flooded. I flooded forever and ever and ever. I was at 17 lands when I first played that. And in that one, I went to 16 after that. I think what it was is a couple things. So I did end up losing round 2 to him. My score in the end was I won 2 rounds and I lost 1 round. I lost to him. I think he got knocked out in the last round as well, so I don't think he went undefeated or anything like that. I think I would have beaten his deck fairly regularly if I didn't flood quite as hard as that. But part of the problem is my deck has nothing to protect against flooding. I was offered no Guild Mages and no Mana Sinks, which means that yes, Jumpstart helps a little bit, but it doesn't help perfectly. I ran 17 lands to begin with, and I moved it down to 16 after that because I was just so fucking frustrated with that. The Mystic won me some games. This was very strong. I had a lot of synergies in this deck. Fire Urchin, Electromancer, Smelt Ward Minotaur, Piston Fist Cyclops, Wee Dragonauts. and Murmuring Mystic all trigger off spell procs, and I've got lots of repeatable sources of cheap spells, right? Lava Coil is a maximize altitude, double direct currents, Hypothesizzles. They're not particularly cheap, but they are card advantage things. Part of the problem was Hypothesizzle was pretty bad. The more I play this card, the less I like it. It almost always requires that I give up 2 spells to draw a land and do 4 damage. And that's pretty painful for 5 mana. That's not a great value. I did have one glorious turn versus an opponent. So my 3rd round, I played against a newer player. And I kept a 1-lander because I was just so fucking frustrated after the last game where I had flooded out and lost. And I kept a 1-lander. It was like a rage keep. I'm like, fuck it. I'm not giving this hand up. I've got a Sprite in my hand. And it took me 5 turns to draw a land. But I managed to stabilize that board at 4 health. My opponent did not play a lot of threats. And one of the turns was like the most glorious is-it turn ever. I had in play, I had a, oh my god, a Leapfrog. No, it wasn't. It was a Smelt Ward Minotaur, a Wee Dragonauts, 2 Piston Fist Cyclops, a Murmuring Mystic, and I cast a spell. And it was 5 triggers going off, including generating tokens, making his stuff unblockable, and activating double Cyclops. It was beautiful. So I did actually win that game, which was hilarious, but I shouldn't have won that game. I should have kept the hand. It was just a rage keep. The deck ended up, I ended up adding more creatures across the course of the night. I just didn't have enough creature aggro to go with that, especially with any removal. The Wojak Bodyguards in particular, I think I might only start counting these as like 3/4 of a creature. They're not a bad card, but it's really painful when your opponent removes your other creatures. I had a hard time. I always run this issue with Is It, right? My creatures are great when I'm attacking, but it's hard to mount a defense. They're not particularly fast. They're all about like my opponent can't react. I can't make him, he can't block, and I can get some burst damage in if I'm throwing a bunch of spells around. But I have a hard time being aggressive with this and not just dying to the Boros counter aggression. Mentor fucks me in this deck. Like, as they attack into me, their creatures get big enough, I'm forced to trade. I can never do damage to them, and then I lose to the late game of Cosmotronic Waves and stuff. I really miss mana sinks in this deck. I wish I'd had like 1 or 2 guild mages or something else. Is it mana sinks of some sort to actually be able to deal with the slow end game that this deck had? So, what else? Sonic Assault would have been nice. I did pass 1 Sonic Assault. I think I took a Lava Coil or a Direct Current over it. I would absolutely take that pick again. It would have been nice to have another one. Sure Strikes would have been good too. That would have let me get some damage. The Wee Dragonauts underperformed all night long. The Hypothesizzles underperformed. The worst Hypothesizzle I had of the night was versus that Boros player. He had 1 mana open. He had 2 3/3s on board, both of which were mentoring 3/3s. I think it was a Wojak Bodyguard and the 2/2 First Striker mentor that had been mentored once already. So he had 2 3/3s on the board, and he just played another creature. And end of his turn, and he had 5 mana, and he tapped 4 of it. End of his turn, I Hypothesizzled the 3/3 mentor, and he responded by fucking take harding it to give it +2/+2. So I didn't get to kill it, and I had to throw 2 cards at it and pay 5 mana. I lost that game, by the way. I could have used some Beacon Bolts, might have been nice. I think if I had the choice, I'd have played Beacon Bolt over Hypothesizzle. I like the draw 2 cards portion of this, but I'm so not into throwing cards at things very often now. And a lot of times when you play Hypothesizzle, you're counting it as removal in your deck. You know, and your thought when you play it is, I'm going to remove this creature, or I need to remove this creature. Here's my removal to do that. But shit, 2-for-1s me all the time. And I ran out of gas late game. Other underperformers for the Beam Splitter Mage. Goblin Electromancer overperformed. I like this card a lot. Night Veil Sprite was that did about average, right? With no Surveil synergies, it's not super great, but it is decent. It does smooth your curve, and when you're flooding, this is a nice thing to do. I mean, like late game in this deck, I didn't need more than 5 mana pretty much ever once we were in top deck mode. You know, I guess Inescapable Blaze stole me like 1 game. It's a game I was probably winning. 2 games where I was probably winning, but it got the rest of the way there a little bit faster. Didn't have to have 6 mana for that. So there's a part of me that kind of wonders if I should have cut the Hypothesizzles and just run double Capture Sphere, brought the curve down a little bit more, and either stayed at 16 lands or 15 lands or something similar. I don't know. The addition of additional creatures for the final rounds helped, but I played a weaker opponent and weaker decks in the final round. So it's a little bit hard to say if that was just kind of, you know, confirmation bias going on there that, oh, this seems so much better, but in reality, not so much. So anyways, what else? Any other questions about that? I had a Sinister Sabotage. I passed 2 disinformation campaigns to the dude on my left. 2. And he played them both. His first pick was Night Veil Predator. I passed him 2 disinformation campaigns. There was that little that 1/1 flying bug that showed up like pick 8. I'm like, this is just like the bots, except I actually didn't. It didn't dry up at the end of this. I actually got rewarded for my late game picks. I never got to Wojak Bodyguard onto a Minotaur, which seems like it should have happened every single fucking game. Wojak Bodyguard is super underperformed, and sideboard was not very interesting. I think I had 2 Wall of Mist in the sideboard too. I did bring in Dazzling Lights versus the Boros decks. I didn't end up ever bringing in Sinister Sabotage, although I was tempted. I just couldn't find what I would cut. I'm like, I need creatures and I need my removal spells. I brought in Leapfrog. This card started in my deck, and then I removed it, and then I added it again for like round 3. It did okay. It's fairly unexciting. The problem with it is the same problem I have with all the Izzet creatures or the Izzet decks like this, is that it doesn't block. And I'm not always in a position. I mean, I played double Boros, and my 3 opponents were Boros, Izzet. So this card doesn't block. Maybe this would be better versus Dimir or something, where like, or Selesnya, where I want to be aggressive with it and I'm not trying to block maybe. But versus Boros, I was often on the back foot, and this card just trades down every single fucking time. And it doesn't always trade successfully. There's a lot of first strikers in Boros. The 2/2 Mentor, the 2/1 first striker. It's just, this dies to Righteous Blow. It was hard to stabilize a board enough to be aggressive for me. So I don't know. I needed something. I really think the 0/4 Flying Drake would have been amazing for me. That would have been another win condition. And I have a lot of spells in the deck. It's a big body. It demands an answer. It draws you a card when it comes into play. It would have been great. But there was a $16, $18 fucking Assassin's Trophy in that pack. So, oh well. Yeah. The deck went 2-1. I don't know. I think I probably would have beat that Boros deck on average, but maybe not. He had good early game aggression, and he ran at least 1 copy and possibly 2 copies of Cosmotronic Wave. He killed me both times with Cosmotronic Wave on a stalled board. I beat him. I went first, I guess. I think I won the dice roll, then he went first, and I went first. I beat him. The only game he went first, I beat him, and I lost the 2 games where I went first. So I don't know. I'm not sure that I would have beat him more on average. So I'm not booked on PK anytime soon. Drake would have fit in here well. Yeah, I didn't have a Drake. Drake would have been okay, maybe. The Mystic was good. So, how many Dimir decks were there? There were 2 at my table. I said there were 2 pods of 8. There were 2 Dimir decks at my table. The other table apparently fought over Boros a lot. There were like 3 Boros players at their table. And there was a player at my table who wasn't playing Dimir, but he was playing blue, black, red, I believe. I'm not sure where the color combinations were for him. He went 3-0, but I didn't play his deck and didn't get to see his deck, so I'm not really sure. All right. Okay, so that is the review of the Paper Magic last night. Had a lot of fun with that. I walked out with 2 packs and an Assassin's Trophy, and then I sold the packs and sold the Assassin's Trophy. So I walked out with like $30 or something, and bought in for 12 and had a really good time and played with people and got to be a little bit social and got to draft an Izzet deck. Finally got to draft an Izzet deck. I've been trying all day. Didn't quite get to do that. So I had a lot of fun with that. That was a blast. All right. So that kind of concludes the review of this one.